What's good, y'all? Today we're exploring how to set up shadcn UI in a Next.js 15 project. If you're building a Next.js application and want an intuitive, flexible UI library that has built-in Tailwind CSS support, shadcn is just for you. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into it. Before we begin, you might be asking, what the heck is shadcn UI? Well, it's a component library designed to work seamlessly with Tailwind CSS. It's modular, customizable, and includes components that follow accessible design principles. It's perfect for building modern UIs fast. So let's start by creating our new Next.js 15 application. So you have two options. You can create your folder locally, or you can create a repository in GitHub and clone it down. For the sake of this example, I created a new repo in GitHub and I cloned it down. That link will be available in this video description. So to start, we're going to be using PNPM as our package manager instead of the usual NPM. So what is PNPM? It stands for Performant Node Package Manager, and it's an open source package manager for JavaScript and Node. It's designed to be faster and more disk space efficient than the other package managers like the mentioned NPM or Yarn. So if you need to install PNPM on your machine, check out the link I'm putting in the video description for the PNPM website. And if you need further help, let me know in the comments. Or if I need to just make a video on PNPM setup, let me know. To create our new Next.js project, we're going to put the following command in our terminal: PNPM create next app. So now with this running, we're going to be going through the settings for creating a Next.js project. So in our case, we're just going to put a period because we don't want a nested folder since our GitHub repo is our project name. But again, this is personal preference. So if you want to name your project my project, by all means, do that. Yes, we do want to use TypeScript. It's going to accept all the basic settings. Tailwind, yes. Yes, we want a source directory. And yes, we're using the app router. We're just going to go through and put everything for the default. We're not changing anything here. And we're going to let the project install itself like normal. All right, so our project has been installed successfully. So let's go ahead and lower our terminal, and then let's take a look at our package JSON and look at everything in here. So again, we can see that everything was installed. And one thing to note, if you haven't used Next.js or the latest Next.js version 15, React 19 is now stable, so no more canary versions of React 19. It is fully released and compatible with Next.js 15. All right, so now for a sanity check, let's go ahead and try to run our newly created Next.js app locally. So in our terminal, we can run pnpm dev, and that will run the command here in our scripts, next dev, which will pull up our app locally. And if we click on this link, we should be able to see our app pull up once it gets done building. And yes, our app was able to be built successfully. So this is just a quick sanity check to let us know that everything was installed correctly. All right, so now that we have our Next.js app set up successfully, it's time to get to the most important part: adding shadcn UI to our app. So in our terminal, we're going to have the following command: pnpm dlx shadcn at latest init. So let's go ahead and press enter and see what happens. So now it's going to ask us a few setup questions. This is going to help set up our components.json file. So our components.json file holds the configuration for our project. It's used to understand how our project will be set up and how to generate components customized for our project. So let's go back over here to our terminal, and we're just going to put the default, which is New York, and the color we'll go ahead and do zinc. And what we like to use CSS variables, we'll put yes. And now this is going to be configuring our components.json file. And now we were successfully able to initialize our shadcn installation. So now we should be able to see our components.json. So remember, it houses our configuration for our project. Something really important to note is that the style selection we made can't be changed after initialization. Now that we see that shadcn was successfully configured for our project, let's go ahead and try to add some components. So if we go into our terminal and we type in this command, pnpm dlx shadcn latest add, we should be greeted with a list of components that we can add into our app. So we can see here, we go down and we have a lot of different options to choose from. But for the sake of this example, we're just going to add the button component in. So let's go ahead and select our button by pressing space and then submit. And we were successfully able to add in our button. We can see here components UI button, and here is our button component. So now that our button component was successfully added via shadcn, we can actually use it throughout our application. So on our root page, we cleared out the default Next.js hello world template, and we just put a simple div with our newly created shadcn button component. So now if we run our pnpm dev command in our terminal, or however you have your IDE set up, and we go to our app at localhost 3000, our root page should just show a button. And notice that the button does render. It's no click functionality, but if we add an on click event handler, here's a quick quiz. What will happen? What do you guys think will happen? Do you think this will run? Let's see. Time up. This will not run, because remember, by default, every page in Next.js is a server component. So if we want to add some click functionality to our button, we either extract this to a client component, or we make our root page a client component by specifying it at the top of the page. Use client. And now if we open up our logs and we click our button, we should see the functionality working, and there we go. So that was a quick little quiz for you guys if you haven't been paying attention to the previous videos. So we successfully set up shadcn in our Next.js project, and we've actually imported and used the component successfully in our application. Before we wrap up, here are some helpful tips for using shadcn UI components. So one, you want to regularly check the website for updated documentation and new components. Two, only add the components you need to your application. Three, remember that you can customize these components freely to fit your needs. They are built for flexibility, which is really big. 4, you can actually copy and paste the components into your code. So there is a manual installation process if you're not a fan of the CLI method that we used in our example today. So there are a few steps that you have to follow, but again, if you want to do it manually, that is an option as opposed to using a CLI. And lastly, if you're not a fan of how the shadcn CLI places your components, like components UI, if you like a different folder structure, you are able to change this setup in your components.json file under the aliases object. So in our case, if I didn't like my components being automatically thrown in the components UI, I can always change that to whatever directory or folder structure that I like to do. Same thing with everything under your aliases. So that's something else that is really good to know. And there you have it, shadcn UI up and running in your Next.js 15 project. If you found this video helpful, remember, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment below if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. Thanks for watching, and happy coding, y'all. Peace out.